This episode of Hot Cup Cold Case contains disturbing details about a violent crime and may not be appropriate for some listeners.
911 emergency.
This is somebody got to see. This is on
911, what is your emergency?
911, what is your emergency?
Yes, I need a police officer over here.
Q affirmative, assist the elderly female.
911 emergency.
Charlie 2, it's been okayed per the lieutenant. We prefer not to give the code out on the air.
I just have kind of a ridiculous question.
I'm Brant,
I'm Rachel.
and this is Hot Cup.
Cold case. I thought we decided I was going to say hot cup.
Did
Actually,
we?
it was okay.
I feel like I did better that time
You did.
than the last episode.
Yeah, you did better.
We're actually recording from Texas. We're in Rachel's childhood bedroom.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that. I've spent my entire life in this room. It's a very small room. Feeling very claustrophobic in here, actually.
With all of our family up and down the hallways here
Mm-hmm.
in the background. We're here to share with you the two things that keep us up at night. And the first is a hot cup of caffeine. And the second is a cold case. But tonight we have a very special episode for you because we have a couple of our really close friends, Marcy and her husband, Javier. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Man, this chair is so squeaky.
Oh, don't move.
It's okay. Do you need a pillow?
I don't think so. I'll squeak while I'm saying something loud so you can't hear the squeak.
No, we can hear the squeak.
Well, Marcy is here for a very specific reason because
Mm-hmm.
Marcy has history and experience as a 911 dispatcher. And so we're going to be talking to her tonight. And I'm really excited to hear her stories. Javier's decided that he's not going to say much. He's just going to sit there and look pretty. He just wants to be a part of the magic that is an episode recording.
Well, I didn't want to be out in the living room.
Yeah, the alternative was you sit alone out there in the living room while we record in this bedroom.
Yes.
So Javier decided he would join us. Javier is also a fitness trainer. And so we found out tonight that Rachel's rhomboids are...
Rhomboids.
Rhomboids are mushy.
Javier told Rachel her rhomboids are mushy. Maybe I just gotta say, I think your rhomboids are sexy as hell.
Thank you, babe. Thank you, babe. They're always there for me.
I always love hanging out with Javier because he's always identifying mushy things about us.
He does it for a living.
Yes, yeah.
That's true.
True, he is very good at what he does. Very good. So, come see Javier.
Just trying to have y'all live y'all's best life.
And if anyone wants to fully fund a gym for Javier and let him run it, he'll be all over that.
Yes, DM us.
What was that?
My chair?
Probably your family. Are they back yet?
Mom?
Oh, I think it's your brother.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's probably playing a game.
Rachel's brother is on the other side of the wall playing a video game, and it sounds like he's very into it.
Or he's attacking someone.
He's probably yelling at some 9-year-old on the other side of the world who's kicking his butt. So I helped your dad install a Ring doorbell that we got him for Christmas,
Yep.
which they very much need because how many times has this home been robbed since you guys have lived here?
Okay, now, I have lived here my whole life, but I think 4 times.
Oh my
That's still too many times.
God, that's 4 too many times. We've never been robbed.
3 times.
Just to give you like some context.
Yeah, and remember, the statistics on our neighborhood were horrible.
Oh, yeah. So if you listen to episode 5, we found out that of all the cities in Michigan, 95 or 96% are safer than our neighborhood.
Great.
Well, it's like Italian mob in our city. But other than that, it's like really nice and really safe, so I don't know.
If you're part of
Coming
the mob.
from the girl who grew up in
Yeah.
Arlington.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. I married a girl from the hood.
Oh, okay, stop. This is who I am married to, y'all.
There-
My mother listens to this podcast, okay?
Hey,
Your
Audrey.
mom is a real OG, so it's fine.
Yeah, she really is.
She really is.
She could run her own gang.
She
like,
really
her
could.
own mob. I'm serious.
Yeah. Javier's family moved to a nicer neighborhood and got broken into more times. So anything can happen in Texas. So be
Twice.
careful.
Wow.
Twice. One time was before they ever moved in, so they think it was the people that were working on the house. Broke in, stole the stove and the refrigerator.
Oh, wow.
And the island was already installed, so that was an impressive feat for them
What?
to get the stove up and out.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like these guys knew what they were doing.
Oh, yeah.
They could have been the installers.
Yeah, they were probably the installers. And then another time, I was coming to actually check on the house. Walk in the house, put my stuff down, and then I turn towards the living room, and I see the TV's gone and glass all over the floor. Couches overturned,
Oh
chairs,
my gosh.
everything. It was terrifying.
Couches were overturned?
Yes.
Like they're looking for coins or
Yeah,
something between the
they-
cushions.
Spare change.
Spare change, you know? Well, because my parents are old and they probably thought they keep their money in a mattress, but my parents are also smart and they're in banks. So then I just leave immediately.
Because you don't
yeah.
know at this
Yeah.
point if
Yeah.
they're still in the house or not.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I call the cops, call 911. They ask if I think anybody's in there. I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm not going to check.
Smart people. Keep note of that.
yeah. I am not checking. So, of course, then the cops kind of downgraded it. Oh, well, if it's not actively being burgled. So I think I was waiting like 20 minutes.
Burgled.
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 I
That
love
word.
that. I love it.
Yeah, and then the cop goes, have you checked the house? And I was like, no.
That's
Y'all
what
need to
I
go in
called
there.
you
I'll stay
for.
out here.
They're like, sir, we're just trying to determine if this is an active burgle.
Man,
We got a code burgle.
I didn't know what it is, but I was like, y'all need to go in there with your guns, clear the house, and then I'll come in and tell you what they took. So they just ransacked the house and maybe got away with like $500 worth of stuff. Like, not even a lot of stuff, but it was pretty terrifying. So, yeah, crazy.
Wow.
Thankfully, we were broken into every time when we weren't home.
That's right, babe. You see that glass is half full.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, his parents weren't home.
Yeah, they were
because they're
never
older,
home
So
when anything happened.
you
Well,
never know.
We always thought it was like some like ex-friends of my brother's, since they knew the house, they knew our schedule. Right.
Statistically, it's someone you know,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Brant.
Have you ever been burgled,
No,
Miss Marcy?
I haven't.
Neither have I. High five. Never been burgled club?
Listen, don't.
La-dee-da.
Yeah. Don't gloat, you little brats. Like, God.
Well, you can't have every spouse get burgled.
Yeah, and now we're married to these two hood rats.
Literally.
And they probably know people that are going to burgle us now.
Probably do. You brought the burgle on, so.
You brought the burgle into our lives.
We're making jokes.
Here we go. Here's the lazy laughter.
Oh, man.
Oh, God.
I freaking love you guys. The next time we do sit down with you, your little boy will be born.
I know.
Because Marcy is expecting. And
And I'm so excited.
if you're looking for good boys' names, I'm just saying Brant is not a very common one.
That's
Noted.
true. It's not. Are you naming him after Brant? That is so kind.
Oh my God, what if they named him after me?
It's not Brant.
Y'all are funny.
We love you, but no.
Not that much.
Too weird.
Well, if I was having a little boy, I would at least consider naming him Marcy.
That would be very unique, actually.
It actually would.
I actually like some boys' names that are usually a girl's name, like Ashley or Morgan.
Or Kelly.
No, I don't really like Kelly.
I liked how open-minded you were until we got to Kelly. And you were like, nope, I've never met a nice Kelly.
Oh my gosh. I actually really like Morgan for a guy.
I do too. Sounds like a captain. So Marcy's looking for good baby names.
No, she's not looking. They already have one. They just won't tell me.
Oh. I was hoping we could have a series of episodes where we have listeners submit baby names and then we narrow them down, and the winner, we fly them out to Marcy's birth.
Oh,
Fantastic.
I can be in the room with you.
Great.
They literally name the child as it.
Yeah.
As you give
Please
birth.
bring money. We could charge admission.
Oh my god.
Not a bad idea anymore.
Just saying.
Yeah, I'm not hating this idea right now. So should we get into the reason why we're here tonight, and that is to talk to Marcy about her experience as a 911 dispatcher.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
So Marcy, you're going to share with us some of your crazy stories from working in that industry for 4 years. But also, this will be a great episode for people who have always been curious or are possibly interested in pursuing a career as a 911 dispatcher. So if you're like me and Rachel, you may not know very many people who have ever worked as a 911 dispatcher, which is why we are super excited to sit down with you, Marcy, and talk to you about your experience. And we'll definitely do this again next time we're in Texas, because I just realized we should ask our listeners to submit questions for her.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you have questions that you'd like to ask Marcy about her experience, you can submit those to hotcupcoldcasepodcast@gmail.com or DM us on Facebook and Instagram. Well, let's get into it. So Marcy, tell us some stories.
Well, I guess I would say a little bit about my experience in general.
Mm-hmm.
Just for your audience's sake, it is not CSI. It is not like on TV. Is that a show called 911 on now?
Yeah, there
It's
is.
not like that. There was a movie called The Call recently with Halle Berry.
Yes.
I remember that one.
Is pretty accurate up until the point where she goes to rescue the girl.
Uh-huh.
That part doesn't really happen. The way that the center is set up and they show her taking the call, that's pretty accurate.
Oh, okay.
So where I worked, I won't say the city for the sake of safety reasons. So I did 911 calls and non-emergency calls. And we also dispatch police, fire, and medical personnel. So typically, if you call and you have an actual emergency, which, by the way, don't call 911 if you don't have an emergency.
I actually don't know any other number to call.
So every city has a non-emergency number. I would look it up, post it on your refrigerator, post it somewhere you can find it. For example, don't call 911 to ask the weather. Don't call 911.
Has that happened?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Like as a prank call, or
No.
you think these people
People
like
are serious. They really want to know.
like maybe they were trying
is
to dial
this storm?
411?
Is this storm going to be bad?
Is the storm
don't
gonna
know.
be bad?
Oh my god.
I would know as much as you. Please
Oh my
consult
gosh.
Google or the news. Or literally anyone else. Call your mom. I don't know. Typically, in that scenario, call takers or dispatchers have different roles in some cities. So, for example, the city we're in right now, specific people take the calls and then would send it to a dispatcher. And then the dispatcher is responsible for sending appropriate units.
And you were the
In response.
dispatcher.
Yeah. So the city I was in, we did everything. So
Oh.
you take the call,
Uh-huh.
get the location information you need, and also dispatch.
Oh, wow.
So every city is different. Typically, larger cities have call takers and then dispatchers.
So how does that work?
It doesn't get overwhelming. So if they have a call taker and a dispatcher, when the phone rings, someone would answer the phone, and their only role is answering the phone. They would get the necessary information, put it into the system, and that information is sent electronically to a dispatcher who then sends police, fire, or medical.
So you not only answered calls, but you dispatched. So you were talking
Yes.
to people
Yeah.
while you're doing all this.
Yes.
Wow.
So it's a lot.
Yeah.
Mad respect for all dispatchers. So I did that for 4.5 years. So typically, if you call and you're talking to someone, the person you're talking to won't change. Because if you have someone who does both, then you typically will notice, because they will either tell you to hang on just a second so they can dispatch, police, fire, medical, or whatnot. And even if you call and you get a call taker, that person will still stay on the phone with you because they're putting in the system what you're saying so that the dispatcher can relay that information to an officer or what have you.
So, like when you have to dispatch the police, do you put someone on hold?
Not typically, if
Okay.
you can avoid it. If you put someone on hold, you have to be very sure that they know they're being put on hold,
Okay.
because you don't want to disconnect the call for any reason. And then, if they're driving or if...
Sorry,
Excuse me.
Rachel's family is apparently rearranging the house while we're trying to record this podcast in the back bedroom.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Can you hear, like, will you be able to hear my brother yelling?
Oh, I'm sure. That's why this episode's going to be fantastic. This is the family episode. This is the holiday special. Comes with all of our
There's a
family's
musical
noise.
number at the end.
Oh my god, this is hilarious. Well, okay, so if you don't put someone on hold, then do you just talk to the police department like while you're on the phone with the person?
Yes.
That has to get confusing.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's set up with a variety of systems all at once, so you probably...
It sounds like your family is literally banging pots and pans. It's getting late.
Okay.
We're recording in the room where your parents are sleeping, so
Yes.
I think they're just getting tired and they're ready for us to wrap it up, and they're just banging pots and pans to be a nuisance. They're like, wrap it up in there, bang, 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 bang.
Okay, let me go tell her to stop.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's
okay.
fine.
Okay, continue.
So yes, it is typically a variety of systems at once. So you'd have 2 different large computer monitors, and then 2 computers that are for maps, another one that's just for the phone, and then you'd have the phone, and then you'd go between a phone and a foot pedal that would utilize the radio. So you use the radio to talk to police, fire,
A
medical.
foot pedal.
Yeah.
That's
So
fun.
it would.
Wow.
Yeah, the foot pedal just opens the channel basically so you can talk.
Uh-huh.
Because one screen would be just for radio purposes. So typically you would get a call, answer it, determine location, basic information of what's happening right then,
Mm-hmm.
and then put that information in the computer, and then determine, is it police, is it fire, is it medical, and then you would choose the best available unit based on the location, and then dispatch that out. Sorry.
I don't. If she starts the
Distracted
blender,
me.
I'm gonna lose my mind.
She's about to start making margaritas. She's whipping up a storm in there.
Oh my god.
Your mother.
I don't know what she's doing.
So Marcy, let's get into some of the crazy stories that you came home with.
Well, usually if you tell someone you're a dispatcher, the first thing people say is, "Oh, so what's the craziest thing you've ever heard?"
Yeah?
Well,
Yeah.
that's really different depending on your personality, or
Mhm.
usually the crazier things are emergency situations, but you'd be surprised at people who call because they need someone to talk to, which
Aw.
happens a lot.
Really?
Older people,
Oh.
that happens a lot.
No
because
kidding.
you're always open, and we're not allowed to hang up on people.
Did
You're
you ever,
talking for
Did
10
you ever
minutes.
have
Oh,
some
yeah.
conversations
Oh,
with
yeah.
some old folk?
Yes.
Okay, what about creepers?
There aren't a lot of creepers, but some people who you can tell are maybe not mentally stable,
Okay.
who just want to chat.
Okay.
Some people call and they're very paranoid about certain things, U.F.O sightings and the like.
Oh
Yeah.
my
And
gosh.
so they like to chat for a while. Typically, at least in the city where we live, if we can get an address, I'll send an officer to talk to you if that's what you want.
So do you have to get the address from them, or do you as the dispatcher see where the call's coming from?
You do have to ask for the address unless it's a landline. And if it's a landline, we ask you for the address anyway to verify, because landlines can be wrong and then you send people to the wrong place and it's a whole mess. So if they ask you for your address, give them your address. In fact, the longer you take to give the address, the more delay you're just creating for the call. So even if you're panicking and it's a crazy situation, take a deep breath and just give the address.
Wow. You know, I just found out back where I work in Michigan, our state passed something called Smart 911 or something like that. And what it is it allows our 911 dispatchers to not only see where you're at, but if you're on like a multi-level building, they can see what floor that the 911 call is coming from. So they can not only
Wow.
come to the right building, they can make their way to the right floor, which is pretty amazing.
That's great.
Yeah, it made me feel a lot safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm registering for it right now.
There you go.
So
Another life potentially saved.
Okay, so you were saying how like what we see on TV is not typical.
Right.
So what if I'm kidnapped? I don't know where I'm at, but I
Right.
did get to a phone. How do you find me?
So what we would do is ask for landmarks. So look around. What do you see?
So on TV, they can triangulate positions
Right.
if you're on the phone for a certain amount of time. Can you guys do
Right.
that?
To an extent. So what would happen in that scenario is if somebody calls and they don't know where they are, but it's a life-threatening situation, you can tell, like, say, for example, not being kidnapped, but we did have a call once where someone was in a car with her boyfriend or spouse, what have you, and he was being physically violent to her in the car while driving.
Oh my God.
And so she doesn't know where he's taking her, but there's obviously something going on that's potentially life-threatening. So she doesn't know where she is, but if you're on a cell phone, then we can use the map to at least kind of pinpoint your general location.
Uh-huh.
And cell phones are notorious for, they just bounce off the nearest cell tower.
Like pings.
Right. So it's not exact, but that thing is real. You can do that. They do that on TV all the time. And on TV, you get it back like right away. It's not right away in real life.
Okay.
You have to call a cell phone service provider. It has to be life-threatening. You give them the phone number, and then they can get you a latitude and longitude. And that can take a while, unfortunately. So in those situations, you just have to keep someone on the phone as long as possible.
Wow.
And then
That's
if
terrifying.
you lose a call in those scenarios, which sometimes you do, typically because they hang up or their phone dies or someone takes their phone, then they can only ping the phone to the last location the phone was at when it was on. So they can find you, but it's just not like on TV. So I think a lot of people have misconceptions about that.
Okay, you talked about how in your city you're not allowed to hang up because
Right.
you hear on some like 911 calls that I've listened to, not a lot of times, but I've seen a few times where the 911 dispatcher or call taker gives horrible advice or hangs up or puts someone in a bad situation. Like, are you held accountable for those things? Like, could you go to jail if you gave someone like the wrong advice or not the correct advice?
Yeah. So I actually have an interesting criminal case about that to share with
All
you.
right.
So there was actually a story of a lady who was a dispatcher, or I believe she was just a call taker, in Houston last year. So she had been a call taker there, and there was one specific incident that I think led to an investigation on her behavior.
Oh, wow.
There was a 911 call from a convenience store where the owner had been shot during a robbery. So this
Oh,
person
no.
arrives to the convenience store, probably just going in, and hears gunshots. And so he leaves and gets a safe distance away and then calls 911.
Uh-huh.
So he's trying to report this incident, and the line picks up and is immediately disconnected. So he tries to call again 30 seconds later. And when the call comes in, this woman, this call taker, asks him if he needs medical, police, or fire. And so he says, this is a robbery. And it says that he heard a sigh and then the line disconnected. Yes. And so the person who was shot was the owner of the store, and he eventually died
Oh, no.
from his injuries. So come to find out, she had been convicted after an investigation, determining that she had disconnected calls for thousands of callers.
What?
Thousands over her career there in Houston.
Just annoyed with these emergency calls that were coming in
So
Right.
annoyed
and
this is
hung
her
up on people?
job?
Thousands of people?
Yeah. So she was quoted as saying to a caller reporting some cars that were racing on the highway, quote, "Ain't nobody got time for this for real," and hung up.
Oh my God.
Okay, that we need a shirt with that on it.
Oh my God.
She just said, "Have
Ain't
time for
nobody
it."
got time for this.
No time for it.
For real.
Now,
Oh
granted, does
my
anyone have
God.
time for car racing?
No. If I heard that,
But
I
still.
would literally check to make sure I had just called 911.
Right.
Did I
I'm
just
not
call my
on YouTube
Did I just call my
or-
grandma? Like, what just happened? That is crazy.
Yeah. So they do interviews with her, and she had been quoted as saying she would hang up if she just didn't feel like talking to them right then
Oh my gosh.
or not. And so her attorney, of course, because attorneys are hired to make you sound good,
Right.
even if you're guilty.
Yeah, I bet
Yeah.
she put him to work.
Oh, yeah. So he was quoted as saying, kind of just blaming it on, an overrun system. The system gets so many calls a day and it doesn't route correctly and it drops calls. And they did an investigation and come to find out there was just an unreasonable number of her calls that lasted 20 seconds or less.
Wow.
In the aftermath of that, this woman, she was sentenced to 10 days in jail and 18 months on probation. So you can definitely be held criminally responsible.
She went to jail for
that.
10 days.
She went to jail for 10 days.
That's it.
In my opinion, she should have gone to jail for more days than that.
Yes.
But
Someone's life could have been saved.
I guess at least they did something. So,
Wow.
yeah. If that ever happens to you, just keep calling. Because unfortunately, dispatching and call taking is just like any other career.
You could get a bad one on the phone.
You'll get a bad one.
That's so scary.
It's really sad because, most people take the job because they want to make a difference. They want to help people in some fashion. They want to be there in the middle of the night when people need help. And that's the majority of people. And other people are not that.
It's scary to think that when you call 911, you might be getting someone who wants to make a difference, or you might just be getting someone who wants to make a buck.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yikes.
goodness.
But I guess the same is true for really any profession. I mean,
anything.
how many teachers do we know who love teaching? And then you have teachers that just hate their job and hate kids.
Right.
And those are the worst teachers ever.
Just don't be a teacher at that
Yeah.
point.
Although I had a teacher in junior high that absolutely hated her job. She was by far my favorite teacher ever.
Because she just didn't care.
She just did not care. She once threw a shoe at me.
Oh, God.
I was talking in her class once and she was trying to get my attention, and I guess I didn't hear her, and she took off her shoe and chucked it at me. I remember it bouncing off the desk up into my face. And I just remember, like, I was in mid-speech when I get a mouthful of shoe.
Oh my gosh.
And
what kind of shoe was it? I want to know.
well, she was old, so I think it was an orthopedic.
So heavy.
So, quite heavy.
Well, like a
And also surprisingly aerodynamic. And she was very accurate,
oh my god.
might I add. And from that day on, she was absolutely my favorite teacher because I threatened to report her and she goes, do it. I'm ready to quit anyways.
Is she in Arlington? She sounds like a gangster.
Shut up.
She actually lived in Arlington. No.
Shut up.
And true to form, at the end of the school year, she left.
Of course.
And I missed her terribly. I cried when she left.
How old are you?
I was in junior high.
Let's do it. To miss a teacher.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cycle
That
of abuse.
sounds like a case. I think we need to cover this case. How many kids has she done this to? I'm going to fine you, you orthopedic lady.
So let's get into some of the calls you took during your time as a 911 dispatcher.
What's your most memorable call?
So keep in mind, if people call 911, there's a good chance, probably 70% of the time, it's not a true emergency. But 30% of the time, it's a real emergency.
Mhm.
So something really serious is happening. One of the most memorable is more sad than exciting. I did take a call from a man whose daughter had committed suicide.
Oh, no.
And so,
Like- Had just committed suicide and he found her, or?
yes.
Oh my God.
So, self-inflicted gunshot wound.
No.
He found her in the backyard. I guess she had had a history of maybe depression and whatnot. And so he had actually come home early on his lunch break, I think, to check on her because she was at the house. And so, unfortunately, in the time that he was gone, she had shot herself. And so,
Oh my goodness.
the reason why it's so memorable to me is just because the tone of his voice Like, I can't forget the tone of his voice because he just sounded like empty of feeling. And so it's just, I can't get out of my brain.
Yeah.
And
Almost like I couldn't save her.
yeah, because he was very calm. He answered all the questions. And in those kind of situations, call takers typically have to ask questions that are uncomfortable, unfortunately. And so, you know, in that scenario, I have to ask, is there a weapon involved? Where is it? You know, because we send police, we send the fire department, we send paramedics, we send everyone because they're still going to try to save her regardless, because that's what they're trained to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, if there's a firearm involved, it's an officer safety issue. So they just have to know what they're walking into.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, you have to ask questions that can sound insensitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, I have to ask him his address, his name, his daughter's name. And so when he called, I just had him go outside, like to the front, and just wait for them. And so it was just the tone of his voice really just kind of stuck with me. So a lot of the calls that dispatchers have to take are not exciting in any fashion. The ones that stick around with you are just sad.
Yeah.
Because people are usually calling for really disappointing, you know, life circumstances. So that's just one of the ones. That was a really tough one.
Wow.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah. So
Did the city that you worked for offer counseling for dispatchers?
no. And that's just irresponsible, I think. A lot of cities handle things differently. Typically, dispatchers aren't included in what they call debrief. Officers at the end of a shift have debrief, especially if it's some sort of like major investigation that happens, and dispatchers typically aren't included in that. Even though dispatchers really are the first responders, and they only recently classified dispatchers as first responders. Before that, you were basically a glorified secretary, which is just offensive.
Wow.
In all honesty. At least the city I was in, dispatch wasn't included in any kind of debrief.
So when you finish a shift, you just clock out and go home.
Basically. Yeah.
What was that like?
Depending on the day, it could be really horrible, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It can just kind of make you kind of numb because you just don't know. Like, it just leaves you with a lot of questions. And at least for us, with the people that I worked with in dispatch, if you wait a couple days, we could go in to the systems and like read the reports. So at least we could see what happened, you know, in detail after the responders get there. But typically there's no like closure for you personally if you were the one taking the call. But a lot of departments aren't set up to just include you in like debriefing, and they really should. So that's just kind of a disservice, I think, to call takers.
Absolutely. I feel like that is so much trauma to have to deal with and responsibility. That's a lot of pressure. Like a lot.
I get anxious just listening to 911 calls on YouTube or on podcasts. And I can't imagine if the person calling was talking to me.
Right.
And waiting for my response or my advice.
Yeah,
That's scary.
I will say that if anyone listening to this or what have you is interested in a career in dispatching or call taking, and you think maybe you wouldn't be cut out for it, maybe you have a lot of anxiety, maybe you just don't think you have the personality for it, you might be surprised. Because I get really anxious in my own life. But I guess it's the training. For some reason, when answering 911 calls, it's like your brain does something different. So just saying, if you don't think you could do it, you probably could. If you're compassionate and can listen, you'd probably be good at it.
Wow. What are some other memorable calls?
Ones? I mentioned earlier a little bit about the guy who called about U.F.O sightings. Because sometimes you get calls like that, and you're just like, yeah, gotta answer the phone today because some of these other calls will just take you out of it. But then sometimes there's guys who really think they see UFOs, like really in the sky.
Yeah, like what do you say?
If it's a situation like that, we would ask, okay, well, would you like to speak to an officer? You know?
Uh-huh.
Because sometimes people are like, oh, no, I just wanted to report this. Okay, well, if an officer doesn't respond, there's not going to be a report. So I could report this to
you start making clicking sounds with your cable and you're like, I am sending this to the NSA right now.
It's on its way to the top.
I am escalating this to the very top at this moment.
So we would usually just ask, like, okay, do you want an officer? And sometimes they're like, yeah, I mean, it's right here. I'm like, okay, well, they're on their way. Sure enough, there's no UFO, but they will be on their way. And really, it's the best because in most situations, you're glad you're not the one that has to respond to the call. You just answer it and then you hang up. And you're like, good luck. You got it. Y'all have fun with that one.
Have you ever had those UFO calls and then like multiple calls, like from other people thinking they saw the same thing?
Never. No.
Oh.
It's always just one guy.
Yes, always. Always.
Oh my god.
Rachel was hoping to expose
I was.
the UFO
She really
phenomenon
was ready for
today.
that.
She was like,
For a conspiracy right here.
I was.
That's a whole
Sorry,
other,
no.
that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
I was ready.
And
Sorry,
Rachel
no.
and I, we enjoy a good conspiracy.
We really
theory.
do.
Who doesn't?
That might be our spin-off podcast.
Oh my goodness. Did we just come
would
up with
be
a
so
spinoff
fun.
podcast?
I want to
think
be
it'd
on that one
super
too.
fun.
Wait a minute. Hot tea conspiracy.
Oh my goodness.
No one steal that. We're patenting it right now.
Boom. Spinoff podcast.
Okay, so how many times did you get like kids calling, whether it be accidental prank calls or like really in need?
Well, I will say one time this kid called and he had such an attitude on the phone. He was like cussing at me. I was like, excuse me, where is your mom? And he was like, you don't need to talk to my mom. You're not my mom. Like, I know. Where is your mom? I want to talk to your mom. He's like, I don't have to give her the phone. And saying choice words in there, which I won't repeat right now, even though I'm an adult and I can. This child was just cussing at me. And so then it became like a game because he kept hanging up. Like, ha ha ha, and would hang up. And then call again. So, yeah, sometimes you get little pranksters.
So
Because they think they're so funny. But the best is when they do it from a landline. Because now I have your address. And
Yeah.
I'm sending an officer to your house.
Yeah,
And then they don't like that.
I actually called 911 when I was a kid.
I did too.
I've got a story for you. I have this vivid memory. I was probably like 5. I was with my cousin, and I remember asking her, do you dare me to call 911? And she was like, no, that's stupid. And I was like, okay, I will. And so I picked up the phone and dialed 911. And I have this vivid memory of a woman's voice answering the phone and saying, 911, what's your emergency? And I said, shut up! And then I just hung up the phone.
Oh no.
And I thought it was genius.
Mhm.
It was the perfect
You're
crime.
so cool.
Yeah, well, they dispatched an officer because
That's our job.
my 5-year-old butt called it from a landline.
Mhm.
And I remember hearing the doorbell ring and my parents answer the door and then going, Brant, get down here. And I remember stepping out of my room from upstairs and looking down and seeing an officer standing at my front door. And I ran and hid under my bed because in my 5-year-old mind, I remember thinking that my punishment was going to be they were going to do surgery on me. This is the way my 5-year-old mind worked. I was like,
Who does that? Who thinks that?
I think it's because I equated the lights on their car with like an ambulance. And so I thought, oh, they're going to put me in the ambulance because I made this emergency call and they're going to start like operating on me and nothing's
Oh,
wrong.
it works. That's what
I
they do.
was terrified. And I remember running into the room, hiding under the bed. And I was just like, Jessica, don't tell them where I am. And I'll never forget, I saw the feet come in the room. Jessica's came in first, followed by some others. And I just heard a little voice go, he's under here.
What a snitch.
Yeah, snitches get stitches. And my mom grabs my feet and drags me out from under the bed and carries me downstairs and puts me in the officer's arms. So now my imagination has gone wild. I'm like, this is it. He's going to carry me to the ambulance.
Oh my god.
They're going to pull out the defibrillator and zap me. And he just held me in his arms and talked to me about the dangers of prank calling 911. And ever since that day, I have never called 911, not even an emergency.
great.
No, I'm just kidding. But I never prank called 911 after that.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
That's good. I wouldn't. I did that once when I was a kid. I will say one time we were at home. My granny was there and she told us we had to clean our rooms. Well, my sister did not want to do this. And so she says, you dare me to call 119? And my granny said, do it. Go ahead and do it. Okay. Well, phones are smart.
Yeah?
Phones can tell when you dial 911 wrong. And so it can still relay the call to 911.
Seriously?
Fun fact, phones are smart. Yes. So it's trained to recognize any 3 combination of the numbers 9, 1, and 1.
So joke's on Granny.
Exactly.
That call went through.
Oh, it did. So my sister calls. The cops show up. And when the cop gets there, my granny comes in there and she goes, so, you called 911, huh? And so my sister comes in the living room and he asks her, so what's going on? Why'd you call us? She said, well, my granny told me to clean my room and I don't want to do that. And he was really nice. He's like, well, we all have to do things we don't want to do. So I'd go ahead and clean that room. And then he was like, don't play on the phone anymore. And he left.
He's like, well, I gotta go. There's a UFO sighting on the next block.
You never know.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious.
So yes, kids call a lot. Pranks and otherwise. Sometimes kids are the best callers because kids are very literal. And so they don't typically get real dramatic on the phone when you're asking them questions, especially because they're talking to an adult. So kids are usually very respectful and listen well, because they go to school and whatnot. And if something's happening in the room with, say it's a grandpa or their parent or anyone really, and they're concerned, then kids are really great on the phone. I'd rather have a little kid who can speak well than a panicking adult any day, because kids can find stuff if they don't know their address. Do you see a letter? Can you tell me what the address says? Do you know the numbers that are on your house? What kind of car is in the driveway? What does your house look like? Is it red? Is it brown?
Wow.
And so kids are very literal about things too. So let's say someone was having a seizure. A child would tell you, well, he's on the ground and he's shaking. He's just shaking. He's not talking to me. So kids don't usually get real dramatic.
Right.
We did have a story. It was a call. I didn't take the call, but one of the other dispatchers did. Really sad. I won't give all the details, but it was a homicide, actually.
Oh my God.
She takes a call, and it is a boy. I'll just say he was 11. His mom, and I want to say he had 1 or 2 other siblings who were killed in this scenario. So horrible.
Oh my God.
The absolute worst possible scenario.
Yeah.
He had essentially pretended to be dead.
Oh my God.
When he called.
No.
So when the guy left, I don't know if it was his dad or stepdad, whatever it was. When he left, he was able to get a phone and he called 911. And so he's lucky to be alive. He's the only one who survived this ordeal.
Oh my God.
But on the phone, calm, gave information. The dispatcher was able to ask questions and he answered them. She kept him on the phone the whole time.
And if
answered all of her questions.
If he knew the killer, he would have.
Yeah, he told her who it was.
Wow.
Could tell her the names.
Oh my gosh.
His mom's name, the guy's name, knew what kind of car he drove.
Wow.
What kind of car his mom drove, so he could give all that information.
So did they catch him?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yes.
good. Because
he
I
went to
gotta
prison.
have closure.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He did go to prison.
And where does
pretty
the little
shortly
boy
after
live now? Who has the little boy? Is he taken care of?
He is taken care of.
Does he need an adopt?
I won't say where he is,
because we can adopt him. Breaks my
But-
heart.
Yes, kids can be really great on the phone. You would be surprised. Which, by the way, she ended up getting like a service award for taking the call, which that does happen. There is some sort of recognition sometimes.
Oh, really?
But yeah, so she got to meet him after the fact. So teach your kids their address and your phone number.
My wife's phone number is the only number that I have memorized. Well, you did fantastic,
Yeah,
Marcy.
you-
Oh, thanks.
You have a really good.
I was really nervous. Like sweating.
Our podcast made you nervous? You were a 911 dispatcher.
Hey, we all have our thing, okay? I'm trained to do that.
I'm trying to do that.
Well,
Nothing could prepare you for
Let's go
this
time
episode
to-
recording.
Let's go talk to Eleanor.
All right. If you have questions for Marcy, we are going to do a follow-up episode with her again next time we're in Texas or next time she's in Michigan. So you can send those questions again to hotcupcoldcasepodcast@gmail.com or DM us on Facebook, and Instagram. We also would love to hear the story of the scariest thing that's ever happened to you. We collect those stories and share them. And don't forget to rate and review us. Until next time, if you ever need your mug filled
Or your spine chilled.
this is Hot Cup.
Cold case. No, that was great. That was great. It was great. So that's what she's doing. I have a What were you going to say?
Well, I was gonna say that, the officers said you were leaving because they said you were always
One of the
like
best.
calm, like it didn't matter if it was
There
UFO
was a-
sighting or
right.
murder. She sounded exactly the same.
Yeah, there was a sergeant who he was like, she'll come on the radio, 325, 312, signal 5, which is like sexual assault and battery, but my voice is just like, thank you for calling Cinemark, like, it's nothing. Yeah. I've always been told I have good phone voice, and that's because phone voices aren't real.